So,
Okay.
All right. Well, it seems fortuitous. I did not plan this, I want to say, but on a day where, at least in the United States, we are having a major election, our scripture today talks about leadership and what makes a good and a bad leader. So, we are covering 1 Samuel chapter 7 and 8. Chapter 7 is kind of wrapping up the Philistine saga, and then we go into the demand for a king. I did pair these together, even though there's a time jump in the middle of them. These two passages are meant to talk to each other, because we'll see a little repetition of a trope, and then kind of the thing that I would like to do is actually spend a lot of time talking about Samuel's critique and the things he says the king will do and why the people want a king. Kind of do a pros and cons monarchy discussion. But first, let's recap where we were last time. If you remember, Eli and his sons were in charge. The Philistines were attacking and it wasn't going well, so they bring the Ark of the Covenant to the battlefield. Lo and behold, it's captured. Eli and his sons die by unflattering means, and eventually the Ark of the Covenant kind of like makes its way, or well, it does a tour around Philistine towns, causes a bunch of chaos. They put it on a cart and it rolls back to the Israelites. We have chapter 6 verses 17 through chapter 7 verse like 1 and 2. That's kind of a contiguous paragraph that for some reason the person who numbered the Bible kind of split it part way. So that's just saying that the town that it initially arrived in, evidently it's still causing chaos, and so they're like, hey, neighboring town, can you take it from us? And they do. And so it's lodged there for a long time. But that brings us to Samuel the judge. So that's the overview. We come to verse 3 in chapter 7, and we see that Samuel is now addressing the entire people of Israel after all of this debacle. And he is calling them out for being idolatrous, for not following the Lord, and that they need to do a ritual to get themselves back in God's good graces. And I'm curious what you thought of this, of like, put away your other gods, confess you have sinned, and we're going to do this ritual as kind of like his first act as a leader.
it's a theme that occurs over and over. I mean, and he's saying it, but the Lord has been saying that, and over and over, and it lasts for about 5 minutes, and then they do it again. So I hope he has a little more impact.
Okay.
But it does seem to have an effect on the Philistines.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of surprised that they were still worshiping all these gods after all they've been through. How come they so quickly went back and were worshiping Baal?
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think it's more of a foundation to this clean house before we get started here and get rid of anything that is in conflict or
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's always, I mean, we go back to why are there always so many Baal and Astera statues? This one goes back to a conversation we've had a lot, and you kind of just see it pop up every now and again. So if you assume that the Israelites moved into the land of Canaan and truly did annihilate everyone else, it seems really weird that they would keep turning back to these Canaanite deities. So Baal and Astera are the local indigenous deities. They are a pairing. So Baal is like the masculine god, Astera is the feminine god. And it would be weird if the Israelites came in and then all of a sudden just started like pulling gods from their neighbors that they're also fighting with. Which is why a lot of people think that it was more of a cultural takeover, where this group of people came in with the story of this singular god who helped them in Egypt, and it was a cultural takeover rather than a genocide. And that would kind of explain why some people still have like the statues that their parents and their grandparents had in the house. Some
Right.
people are saying this might be like household deities. So not like big G God, but like little G gods that are still hanging around, cultural practices that just kind of haven't been abolished. I see Clay and Mary Ellen.
Oh, you're on mute.
Helen, somebody come to you.
Try that again.
Oh, just, okay, just.
All right, go for it, Mary Ellen.
Well, what you just said explains what I was thinking. That they seem to change gods as easily as they change their clothes. They did this. It was like cleaning house, and I was struggling with how quickly they could go between the different deities and come back to the Lord as we know. And now you've explained it. So thank you.
You're welcome. Clay, did you have additional thoughts? And then we'll get to Gretchen.
Just the notation from my Oxford Bible at the bottom that comments on verses 3 and 4. And it says, probably added by the Deuteronomic editor who felt that worship of false gods was always the chief sin of the people. So again, cleaning house. We're starting over.
This section is very heavy-handed by the editors. There's in the notes that at least that I was reading, there's a lot where it's like, oh yeah, this was put in exile. Oh, this commentary, this was someone who didn't like the monarchy. So there's a lot of editing that happened here.
Yeah, mine has the same thing about the numbers of people that are killed and that kind of stuff, that these exaggerations have been put in by the editors.
Yeah, but Gretchen, what were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking about how convenient those little gods and goddesses were for them. I mean, it might be, well, maybe it could be a little bit of help to me. Crops aren't going so well this year. I just, at least I could just talk to them and, they're here. They're visual, they're present, they're manageable, they're handable, and so just it's kind of I won't put all my eggs in one basket. I will have some other helps around me if I need them.
Yeah, Larry?
But I was saying absolutely the same thing. If I was an Israelite, I thought, well, the God that Samuel's talking about, he doesn't always win, I mean, look at what we've gone through. I'll just keep a couple of statues here in the back room just in case, maybe the other side wins. I'll have something to fall back on.
Well, and the Ark of the Covenant was gone for a while, so and the gods seemed to disappear with it.
Yeah, Clay, did you have one more thought?
Just the thought that if you were an Israeli woman trying to conceive, things aren't going well. Hey, one of these little statues, it reminds me of, is it the Saint Joseph that people will plant in their front yard upside down or whatever to try and sell their house?
Right.
I mean,
that's right. Good. I thought.
Yeah, but the fertility goddess made me think of a woman who may just want to, buy, as you said, buy just a little one maybe from someone selling it on, in the market, and why not? So
another way to think about this, that was coming to mind as you all were talking as kind of a way, as an analogous thing without being idolatry in the same way. Most of us go to the doctor, and we know that doctors have done a lot of research, they have a lot of medical knowledge, and you should do what your doctor says, right? Theoretically.
Absolutely.
However, we also know the habit of people that sometimes the treatment, it takes a long time and you're not seeing results right away. And then your friend says, oh, well, I did this thing. I drank this tea and it had immediate results. And so you're like, well, it can't hurt.
Art.
My doctor didn't tell me not to drink this tea, so I'll try it out. Or I mean, there's the people selling essential oils, and there's people like researching like how much that can do, but we figured out that a fair amount of it's placebo. But if you see the way that we try to follow doctor's orders as like the top of the line response, but we're also willing to try experimental things. There's the craze of putting a penny in your shoe. Like, what harm can it do to do this little thing? The doctor won't get mad at me for putting a penny in my shoe. And so you could see how, I mean, they don't have medicine in the same way. Religion and medicine are very intertwined. So Clay, I love that you bring up the fertility thing, because you go to the priest prays for you, you're still having trouble, and your friend says, hey, I have this little statue from a fertility goddess. I'm gonna give her to you. She helped me, so maybe she can help you. And you can kind of see how the folk, I would call it more folk religion than like big R religion. In the same way that I know people who are Christians who go to church every week who still love their crystals and tell me like what all of their rocks do, and I'm like, that's magic. That's not how rocks work.
But
Yeah,
it's
Joe?
human nature
Right.
to
Yeah.
believe.
Joanne?
How about the St. Christopher medal that helps you find things?
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think it's St. Christopher.
Does it work?
Mhm.
St. Anthony also is one that's supposed to help you find things.
So, I mean, one of the explanations of the study of religion, which they is particular to monotheistic religions in particular, is when monotheistic religions spread, they tend to turn other deities into saints.
Right.
Because it's a way to kind of cannibalize another religion without really breaking it. It
Mhm.
allows the adoption of it. So you could see kind of how that was working here, where you have a monotheistic religion moving in, and it doesn't fully kick it. Every so often, it has a bigger kick to push the folk religion out, but it's still in living memory, so it's still going to be kind of there. And so this is another push from Samuel of like, okay, time to clean house, get rid of the folk religion. We're not doing the folk religion. We're not treating your ailment with the home remedies. I know your grandma says to drink Verner's. This is not a Verner's issue. This is not a Vicks Vapor Rub issue. You need antibiotics. That's kind of how I hear Samuel talking.
Mhm.
And so the people go along with it. And so they are at Mitzpah. And there's a lot of commentary about Mitzpah. It is, I believe, north of Jerusalem, but not too far. And Mitzpah is off, or it seems to be that the people who didn't like the monarchy talk about Mitzpah instead of Jerusalem, because they see the monarchy as just an utter disaster. And also, when the Babylonian exile happened, Mitzpah is the de facto capital of Judah because Jerusalem is destroyed. They kind of move shop to Mitzpah. So it's one of the clues that someone who doesn't like the monarchy is writing the script.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
So it's one of those that every author has a bias, and we can kind of automatically see the bias in this text if you know the keywords. So this is someone who doesn't like the monarchy, and we know that. Anyway, so Samuel goes to Mitzvah. They have a ceremony where they're pouring water out and they're fasting, which is the thing that they do for the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, but that hadn't really been established as a holiday yet. And so this also may be anachronistic of someone in the future who knows about Yom Kippur, kind of retroactively saying, oh yeah, they're doing the Yom Kippur thing, even though that's not a thing yet. So any questions about that, of kind of the setup of that situation?
What was the significance of pouring water on the land? Did that have some particular meaning to it?
So I would have to do, or Clay, do you have an answer for that?
Only again, the notation in my book that says that, that was unusual because it was usually wine, but to people from a desert background, water would be very precious and sufficient to use for the ceremony.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is pouring water becomes rituals later on. So this is, once again, we might be seeing a later ritual kind of retroactively written into the text.
Okay.
So while the people of Israel are doing this, they're doing a religious festival. The Philistines hear this and go, hey, this is a great time to attack. Which, in some ways, horrible humans, great military strategy. And so the Philistines start attacking, and the people of Israel hear them coming, and their response to Samuel is, do not cease to cry out to the Lord our God for us. Pray that he may save us from the hands of the Philistines. So do you notice the posture change from the stories before of let's bring out the Ark of the Covenant to the battlefield to them instead saying, don't stop praying. Maybe God will fight for us. So where are the similarities to those 2 points, and how does it differ?
Well, the difference between prayer and supplication and treating the ark as though it's a magic object. It's going to change things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Helen, check your mute.
God is also not physically present or visibly present when they say pray to him, whereas before he was physically present to whoever was praying to him, like Moses or whatever. So it's kind of a change to a different attitude toward how you approach God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's also the difference of, hey, we'll drag God along with us with our plan. And in this one, they're like, okay, we are bowing to you, God. This is not like, if it's your plan that we're gonna die, we're gonna die here. But they're giving God, in some ways, the control and the lead rather than kind of dragging God along like it's a toy. And so Samuel continues to do his burnt offering. Notably, Samuel here is now acting as the high priest. He doesn't necessarily have the lineage for it, but he has the training for it. So he is now acting as priest, like it or not. He has been a prophet, now he's being a priest. And the Lord shows up and is talking in a thundering mighty voice, which harkens back to the idea that the Israelite God originally was a storm god. And so we see that God speaking through thunder, and scares the Philistines off. So they don't even actually attack. God is scary enough that they run away. And so once they the Israelites then pursue the Philistines, cut them down, kind of establish the boundary, and they finally win. Samuel sets up kind of an altar in this area. And we get the commentary at the end that after this, the Philistines stopped attacking. They kind of held this boundary. They reclaimed some cities, and they were able to hold it. And then Samuel is acting as judge. So now we have seen Samuel be prophet, priest. Because he was priest during the military campaign, he is also a military leader, and now he is judge and leader. So you can see he racked up quite some titles in one event. And his style of leadership is he's going to travel around. He's going to make a circuit to go to all the different areas, and then he's going to sit in one place for a while, do some judging, and then he's going to do the circuits again. So that's his style of leadership. He's not just sitting in one place, he's moving about doing things. So what are your thoughts either about the wrap up of the Philistine saga or kind of Samuel's leadership style and kind of how he's going about things?
It's really hands-on. Sitting up in his castle and eating bonbons. He's really hands-on and caring, and it's more a difference in attitude from a king. A king could do the same thing, but he sees the king as, I guess, I don't know whether he's worried about the hereditary aspects of it or the grasping aspects. He says they take all your money and all of that, but it's a nice betrayal. Would it be that all our leaders were like that?
And yet the Israelites demand a king.
Okay.
No, we'll get to that in a moment. We'll talk about their demands and why.
Yeah, so, well, my point was, regardless of how good his judgment was and his leadership, it didn't appeal to the people that much. Or at least when he started getting old, they decided they needed something new and it would be something different.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of going around to the people
Yeah.
rather than the people having to go up to a king.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And bow down.
Yeah.
And I see the judgeship as being like a circuit court judge.
Yeah.
He's taking care of things in different places, and he's going there and engaging the people where they are. So I think that is a very interesting picture that you present in this passage, that you have the priest, you have the prophet, and you've got the judge. And what more could you want?
Yeah.
You know?
You could get a king.
Oh, a king.
Yeah, Clay?
Well, in 13 and 14, Samuel's name is never mentioned. It's that the Lord is doing this and all these things happen, but his name is not mentioned as being a military leader over this. It's just said that this happened, and this happened.
Right.
But it doesn't say Samuel did it. He basically said, hitherto the Lord has helped us. So the Philistines are subdued. The hand of the Lord is against them all the days of Samuel. But
So
what has he actually done, or has it just been good luck?
So this is one of those that I got this partially from what my notes were saying is he is counted as a military leader.
Okay.
It's probably a military leader in a similar way to Moses. So he's actually looking a lot like Moses right now.
Yes.
He's talked directly to God. He kind of has that prophet and priest role, although Moses didn't really do the priest stuff because his brother Aaron did, condensing a little bit. But if you remember, God told Moses what to do, and then Moses told the people. And I think it's implied that that's kind of what's happening is Samuel's doing the ritual, but can give commands through the ritual so people know what God is doing. That's an assumption. I cannot fully back that up. I'm working with both the notes and the text.
I was thinking about Moses also. He got tired riding the circuit.
Gotcha. Yeah, Gretchen?
Well, I think we can't pass this up without talking about his Ebenezer, his rock that he names Ebenezer for whatever reason.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody asked me the other day, well, what, we talk about Ebenezer churches, there, and here I raise my Ebenezer, it's a great song, we sing. So here it is.
Yes. And I believe it translates to the stone of help.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the stone of help.
Which I believe is why Ebenezer Scrooge is meant to be an ironic name, because he's supposed to be a helpful person and he's a grump.
Interesting. I never even put them together. Never even thought of Ebenezer in that term.
Yeah, so he is stony, but he's supposed to also be helpful.
It's not a very popular boy's name these days, is it?
No.
No.
Yeah.
And what is that line in the song? Here I raise my Ebenezer.
Yeah, yeah.
I raise my stone of help. I don't quite.
I believe it's actually, I do think that line is in reference to here. So raising it not as like here I'm like raising my stone of help, but more of like setting it up, because he's setting up an altar that he's calling his stone of help. So it's like, here I am raising my altar of help.
It's Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah, isn't it? Is a hymn. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
So, that's been kind of a nice image to think about. To have that sitting on your kitchen counter and you think, oh, this is my stone of help. I can get through this. I can do this. I can every day, there it is right in front of you.
Yeah. So the last question to kind of wrap up this section of Samuel's leadership, at least. What did Samuel do to earn this position as prophet, priest, and judge?
God chose him.
Okay.
That's the way it all works. No, God says, you're the one.
Is there something else? Because I believe there's another piece at play here. So what are some of so he is in the line of the judges. So if you think back to the previous book, what did all the other judges do that Samuel's also doing to kind of earn this rank as not just a priest, but he's a judge?
There's a kind of ruling over the people.
Well, he was also raised in the temple. I don't know if that makes a difference.
So he has some qualifications. He's not just some person. He went through training. God chose him, chose him, called him in the night. And I would argue he has somewhat earned the title. It's not just that he had the rank and the training and the chosenness, but he has like kind of gone out and worked with the people. So he doesn't have an inherited position. He has a position that he kind of, yes, he was chosen, yes, he was trained, but he also had to work for it.
And he didn't do anything wrong.
Well, not
Right.
yet.
Yeah.
It
Alright.
seems he has a little trouble with his family too, but that's another, we'll get to that.
Well, that's actually right where I'm going is so
Okay.
we kind of discussed Samuel's leadership. Let's talk about how things go. So we have a time jump of about 20 years. Samuel has 2 sons, and when he's old, he appoints his sons to be judges over Israel, but kind of like Eli, these guys aren't the best. They're taking bribes, they're turning a blind eye, they're not doing a good job. So what makes Samuel's leadership different, or like what makes it different, Samuel's start different than his son's start?
You know, this is a thing too here. This is an argument against a monarchy.
Okay, tell me more.
You got these inherited sons, like you're always going to have the king, not going to have such nice kids. And this is a way the monarchy is going to be.
So this is the second time in a row we've seen the father good, sons bad, and this is why titles shouldn't be inherited. That's what I'm hearing from you. Other thoughts? Helen?
Every time the vacuum comes on, I turn it off. Samuel is not pleased with this, and he doesn't like this. He wants his sons, but on the other hand, when he prays, which was a good thing to do, knowing that Samuel is good, he prays about what to do, and then he changes his mind. But I think he was couldn't help but be kind of insulted that the people didn't want this done.
So we see a bit of a distinction where this isn't Eli round 2. Eli was critiqued by God and he kind of still turned a blind eye. Whereas here, Samuel evidently, I'm gonna guess it's really hard to be a judge and a dad at the same time. It sounds like it's really hard to be an important person who is responsible for an entire group of people and raise your child properly. But the difference is Samuel is willing to listen. So let's talk about why the people want a king then. So we see that Samuel appointed leaders. Unfortunately, it was nepotism. He appointed his sons, and they're not good leaders. So is that the sole reason why people are like, nah, we want a king? Or what's the rationale for wanting a king?
Everybody else has one.
Okay.
Spoken like a third grader. Everybody else has a TV in their room.
And they're all happy and doing well, and we're not.
Yes.
So,
well, you know, it is kind of an odd thing, I think, in a way. Why do they want a king? Have they been at some point missed out on some ceremony that everybody else around them had, and they didn't have anybody to send? I don't know, I wonder what's behind it. Oh, you know, they see other people, but
and they want one leader, whereas they've got 2 now because they've got these 2 sons.
Okay, one leader
running things, and Eli had the same. They want one leader, one person to turn to, one person to take care of them.
Yeah, to take care of them.
That's what they want.
So why else? So we're going to start the pro and con list. We're going to ignore this text for just a little bit because, like I said, this text is biased. The writer of this section does not like kings. We know they don't like kings because they've given us all the hints that they don't like kings. So put yourself in the mind of a of someone in this time. You're a peasant. You have 12 tribes. They're kind of just doing their own thing. They don't have a king. Neighboring countries attack, but they're also like occasionally repelled. Sometimes things are good, sometimes things are bad. Why in that world would a king be a good idea?
Well, does having a king reduce your personal responsibility? You can turn it over to a strong man and hope that he solves the problems. I don't know. I'm just,
Well, they
Helen?
would be,
That they'd be unified together.
oh, unifying.
I
Yeah.
think one person, one king with all the power, could bring them all
Right.
together.
Right. That's it. Yeah. That's
So we've already seen that before in the book of Judges, it ends with civil war. Like they were attacking each other.
Oh, yeah.
right.
And so having a unifying force is good.
Mhm.
And the judges haven't always been able to provide that unifying force.
Then they assume a king can.
Yeah. So Gretchen, I
There's a-
saw your hand.
well, I was saying about a certain amount of pride for the people. Even a lowly person could say at least, well, our king is, and there might be special days that you'd get to celebrate a little bit or have a parade, do something that's kind of fun and important, and be an article to write up for the newspaper. The king came and we all stood around and were happy and drank and partied. So, it's kind of, as they say in Monty Python, it's good to be the king.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mary Ellen.
Well, as you described this peasant and his small holding within this group of people, having a king would control the bullies in this society. That I can imagine that there are, I'm going to say men, who would be intimidating their neighbors with one thing or another and be more aggressive in how they deal with their compatriots. But having a king kind of puts a stop to that. The king can put a stop to that and unify the peasants in the way they expect to be treated, rather than having somebody running free reign. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
without the
that's
unification, punishment is piecemeal. That you can, if you have a strong chief and leader, it's fine, and the bullies may be kept in place. But if you don't have a good one, bullies can run amok. And
Mhm.
it's always the best. So
one other aspect that I wonder about is, or that some of this conversation is making me think of, is the power of having, for lack of a better term, a mascot. Where you may not be able to enjoy the richness of all that life has to share, but in the same way that we kind of have the celebrity culture we do, a lot of people very much enjoy luxury by proxy, where there's a sense of elevation of, well, maybe I live in the dirt and have to farm and I am a farmer, but I like to see the glitz and glamour. And if we don't have a king, you can't even like see it by proxy. You can't identify that like, oh, well, that's my king. Look at how cool they are. I'm kind of like associated, and some of that kind of reflects on me. And if they don't have a king, then it looks like they're all just a bunch of peasants. And what fun is it to be equal peasants that have like a decent standard of living? Isn't it kind of fun to have someone to kind of look up to?
show
Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Well, look at the
Thank you,
monarchy
sweetie.
in England, which is largely sort of an honorary sort of thing. But you know, they're always dressed royally. They always appear very opulent. They're the sort of things that people can look up to and aspire. You know, as opposed to a dictator, you know, who may or may not have the same powers as a king, but is sort of an entirely different sort of character from what a monarch should be.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, Mary Ellen?
What they're not looking at, excuse me, all this glitz and glamour has to be paid for.
Mhm.
And where's that coming from? And they're not looking at the realities of the cost to them if they want this and all the glitz and glamour and showing off the parade, on and on. I mean, for a while there, their life's going to get drastically worse.
Mhm.
Right. So an interesting example of this somewhat, thinking about the difference between how we run and fund Presbyterian churches versus what I'm going to call or the one I'm going to pull for them is the Quakers. I've had friends who are Quakers, and it's fascinating hearing how their services go. So in our system, we pool our money. Northminster has funded this building and the maintenance and upkeep. We're a small church. We're not like the empires around us, like the big mega churches or the fancy cathedrals. We're a modest church. And so at the same time, you all pool your money to hire a religious professional to organize, to cast vision, to do the technicalities, to make sure we have a budget and all of those things. And we elect leaders for the session to make decisions. And so we don't have the most hierarchical system. We have a modest hierarchy and it's elected. So there's some give and the take, but you all, like, I am the most expensive thing on the budget, my salary. And you all give money to pay me to do this.
Mhm.
Whereas the Quakers do not have religious professionals. They do not have someone organizing the order of service. They sit and it's more meditative. And if someone feels called to speak, anyone can speak. They pool their money so they can buy a building, but they don't have to pay people to staff and run it. So there's more money in their pockets. But you don't have some of the organizational structure that we do.
Mm.
And so you can see some of this, and what they're going to look at is there will be more crops that they get to keep if there is no monarchy. If they want a monarchy, you're 100% right, Mary Ellen, they have to pay for it.
Pay for it, yeah.
And the question is, are the benefits of monarchy, does it outweigh the cost of it? And so when the people go up, they don't go up to Samuel's sons, even though Samuel's sons are the ones technically in charge. They go straight to Samuel and they say, hey, Samuel, we want a king. And Samuel is immediately offended. He is hurt, he is heartbroken, and he goes to God in prayer. So what do you think is motivating Samuel's personal heartbreak over them asking for a king?
They don't like me?
Right, yeah. It in some ways is just personal offense. You don't think I'm doing a good job?
Well,
Mhm.
aren't his two sons in charge at
Yes,
this
they
point?
are.
Yeah. You know, Samuel must feel pretty bad about that. I mean, these are his two sons, and the populace is objecting to the way that they're doing things. You know, reflects on him too.
Are you saying I'm a bad father? Are you saying I made bad choices? You don't like the decision I made? You don't like my family?
Yeah. But it's not you, Samuel, has been rejected. It is God.
Right. And so that's the response when Samuel prays about it. God says, they haven't rejected you. You were a fine judge. Like, don't worry. And we get this language that I believe I don't think we've seen this before as an idea, but it's here. It's interesting. Is God was supposed to be their king. I don't think that
Yes.
this is explained in other places and like set up by like Moses or even Joshua or whatnot. But the assumption is that God was supposed to be the king and the judges are beneath God and kind of doing the bureaucracy, but God is the monarch. Not only is God the only God in existence, God is now the monarch over the whole system. So what do you think of this being an effective monarchy, that the Lord God is king?
Pretty hard to touch this king or see this king. It's a strictly faith-based organization.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's like not only do you have a God that's not visible, you have a king that's not visible then.
Mhm.
Which also means if you're trying to negotiate with other tribes, it's not like you can send your king, because your king is an invisible deity that doesn't even have a statue. There are other reasons why this might be a hard thing for the people to deal with.
Well, it's different. You know, if it's working for everybody else, we're not doing it, well, maybe we're doing something wrong. It's
Well, yeah. And God has to speak through human beings, so it depends on the human being listening well and being a good interpreter, and he would be a prophet, I guess. And there were some that were good at that, but they weren't kings.
So the thing is, the idea of a god, a deity being king, is actually not original here. It is, I think, the first time we are seeing this as the Israelite God being referred to as king is new here. But the idea in the ancient world that a deity would rule as king is not at all new. That's actually what Egypt does, except their monarch is assumed to be the god. And
same
we
with
will
the
see this
Romans.
also in the Greek system, where their kings are considered deities.
Right.
And instead, this seems like instead of making your king a deity, this is making the deity a king. So it's kind of doing the same thing, but in reverse. And the people are like, no, we want a human. We want a human to rule us. And so Samuel asks or God tells Samuel, okay, give them a warning, but they're gonna choose a king. Just a heads up, they want a king. And so Samuel goes to them and he's like, okay, you want a king? Here's what's gonna happen. Your sons are gonna be drafted into the military and they're gonna die. You're gonna plow the fields, you're gonna have grain, and the king's gonna take a large portion of it. He's gonna take your equipment, they're gonna take your donkeys and your horses. Your sons and daughters, they're going to be courtiers and perfumers. Like they're going to be a part of some of them are going to be a part of the court. And, but like, he's going to take some of your flocks. Kings are going to just keep taking. They're going to take a little bit of everything. So are you still willing to deal with having a monarchy if it means you lose your sons and your daughters, your grains and your flocks? And they go, Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds
Don't-
good. I'm
don't-
willing to
don't-
give my tithe. I am willing to pay my taxes in order to have a king. Helen?
I don't think they really believe it's going to happen. You know how you hear all these bad things. And then,
Yeah.
oh,
No,
they are
that-
crazy. It's not going to work like
It's
that.
not like that.
It's
Yeah.
going to be
Good,
great.
good point.
I mean, there's also the thing where people can imagine it one way and it can be a different way. Because if you think, okay, my sons are going to be drafted into the military, but hey, we're going to have a better military leader, that means they have a better chance of coming home. Okay, they're going to take some of my crops. I can deal with tithing 10% of my crops, but they don't imagine that that number is going to creep to 15 to 20 to 30% of their crops. They're like, okay, I'm willing to give a few sheep for the king. And they don't realize that some people are going to have to manage the entire flocks that are not theirs to support the king. They can say, okay, we are willing to pay for someone to have a comfortable life. And they don't realize that kings often want to live in luxury, not comfort. So I could see how they may be hearing some of this and they're like, oh, we're willing to make his life comfortable and not really imagining the reality of what it means to give that much power to one person.
You're not going to go any farther with this political statement, are you? Because I'm like, all over the world now, people are giving power to one person. But maybe we save that for another time.
I like to talk about the text, and if the text critiques our modern system, that's not my fault. So, doing the pros and cons list, we have about 5 minutes left. What do you think is compelling? Like we've talked in some other scriptures where it's like, this seems to be leading up to the fact that the people need a king. And some of the previous scriptures we've talked about, king kind of seems like a good idea. And now we have this list of all the terrible things that are horrible about having kings. And I'm curious what side you're convinced about. Gary, I saw your hand.
Well, who's responsible for bringing forth the pros of having? I mean, Samuel didn't do it. He was biased. But where do we get to discuss or think about the positive aspects about a king other than just the emotional thing because the other guy's got one?
Mm-hmm. So there is not one list like we have for the cons. What I would say is a lot of the end of the book of Judges functions like a critique on the judges. Because for a while, judges were good. You had judges like Deborah. You had judges like not Gilead. What's his name? The guy with the fleece who like was
Gideon.
Gideon, thank you. You had good judges, but by the end of Judges, it's chaos. That there's civil war breaking out, and it kind of shows you that there's a need for something different. But there's not like a pros list that we're gonna find, partially because this was edited in exile after the monarchy was seen to be a bad idea. But we're still going to get pro-monarchy language because in a few books, we're going to see that David in particular, his courtiers have a heavy hand in editing that part of the text. So we're going to see the things that are pro-monarchy later on. But it's not in a list.
They don't think about representative government.
No. Representative government is a long way off from being imagined.
I know, but I mean, that is an option. I mean, that's one of the ones that, yeah.
Yeah.
that failed. They're still looking to a single person, be it a judge or a prophet, or
So
there weren't very many good kings.
here's one of the things that I think is a conversation beneath this conversation. When you're thinking, do we, like, what style of government is effective? What style of government is good? There is an assumption of how good are people at governing themselves?
Yeah,
Because there's a certain point where if the people can self-govern, if you trust people to do the best thing for not just themselves, but for everyone, then you don't need some of these hierarchical systems to keep people in line. But as we saw in Judges, there's a kind of depressing opinion that people are terrible at self-governing. But then at the same time, it seems like, well, this hierarchical system also is bad because there's almost a knee-jerk, we want our freedom, we want the freedom to do what we want. But we see that we're not good at choosing, we're good at choosing what we want. In the refrain in the book of Judges, everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Everyone's willing to do what's right for them, but we're bad at looking at the big picture. So we have these two arguments about not just government, but what is human nature? Can we govern ourselves?
yeah. When I was in college, the government department was all in love with parliamentary form of government. And I don't think that's really true so much anymore, because they have the same problems that we do. And there are all sorts of variations on both. There's no guarantee that any form of government is going to be good and not bad in the long run. It's scary.
Yeah, it turns out human nature often will find a way to take something that is meant to, if you think about like a pendulum that swings between
Right.
Freedom and restriction, we see that the pendulum often is trying to correct what's been done before. So at a certain point, the pendulum swings and there's a movement towards freedom, there's a movement towards people need to be able to choose what they want to do with their own lives. And when that goes into chaos, then you swing the other way. It's like, okay, we have to rein in human nature. We need regulation. We need to like put boundaries on things. And then people find it stifling, and then you swing the other way. And we're often always trying to correct, because there's no one, I would argue there is no one perfect system for all time. And so one question in looking at this is, what are they trying to correct? Because they are correcting things that are going wrong, but their solution's not perfect, so they're going to have to keep correcting. And the question is, how good are they at doing the course correction along the way to kind of keep the pendulum somewhat in the center?
Well, they had Herod at the time of, at the turn of the century. Well, yeah. Are you looking at the clock?
Oh no, the doorbell rang. But I think looking at the clock is a good idea because it is 11 o'clock.
Okay.
So any final thoughts for today in thinking about governance, good or bad or otherwise? All right. Well then, let us pray out for today, and we will return next week to who they actually choose. We will know who we have chosen, and we will see who they chose.
So,
So with that, let us pray. Gracious and loving God, in our world today, we don't really recognize kings as leaders, but we still have leaders who hold the power of kings. And yet in this text, we're told that you are supposed to be our ultimate leader. Whether we call you king or Lord or God, we look to you for the guidance of the ways that we should live. And so today we pray especially for the people of this nation as we make decisions on who our leaders will be. Help us to choose leaders that look the most like you and look the most like the kingdom that you envision for us. A kingdom where there is abundance and plenty for all, where all people have a seat at the table and no one is shoved out. A place of love, acceptance, and belonging. So help us choose that, and help us be continually active, that this is not the one day where our voice speaks up to guide our community at large, but we may be continually active. A people that participates in our own governance, a people who work to make the kingdom of God a reality in our world. And so we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chris.